Welcome to the Ultra Origin series, where we hear from runners who have recently finished their first ultra or completed a new distance. In these conversations, we celebrate regular people who are doing hard things. There's a lot we can learn from and be inspired by, from people just like you. In this episode, we meet Brandon Sparks, an athlete from Ohio who has always been active but found as he got older, the weight he had gained made it difficult for him to do the things he wanted. So in 2021, he started his weight loss journey, and after losing about 150 pounds, he decided to take on the thing he hated most, running. A note for viewers on YouTube, we did have some technical challenges making this recording, and I only have video of Brandon, so you will only hear my voice during this conversation. It sounds like from what you described in your message to me, that your journey into running was fairly compressed, or at least when starting to running to ultra running. Let's just start with you describing your background. Introduce yourself to us. I'd love to hear the story of how you became a runner.
Yeah, so my name is Brandon. I live in Ohio. I've kind of lived all over the place ever since I met my wife. We got married and I've been here for about 6 years now. I grew up with a very active lifestyle. I was pretty serious into racing motocross. My whole family was. My sister was very good. As far as fitness, nutrition, and training, that's been a big part of my childhood. Once I got out on my own, got out of high school and got into college, it kind of slowly digressed from there. Before I knew it, I was 386 pounds. About 2.5 years ago, I guess it's honestly been more than that. It's probably about 3 years. I'm getting pretty serious with it. And yeah, just, I've always done active things, riding bicycles like you see in the background and skateboarding and, got into rock climbing a little bit. But unfortunately, being bigger, my brain never caught up with my body size. So I was always doing these things, but my body was holding me back, and more or less like I just wanted to get in shape so that my body size and my weight didn't hold me back from being better or doing more of the things I like.
Okay.
So that's where it started. And then as far as running goes, like I picked the thing I like the least. And still to this day, like I hope I don't offend anyone, but I don't like running. I do it because I don't like it. And I like to push myself to do things that are hard. And that's like, what is the hardest thing you can do at being obese? It's running, and especially ultra running. Partially me being a bit of an extremist. I do the 5K and then I'm like, have my sights on these really long ones already. So that's where it started. Yeah.
How long ago would you say it was when you decided that this thing you hated, running, was the thing that you were going to, submit yourself to for a little while?
Yeah. So it would have been earlier in April last spring. I was going to a festival in North Carolina called Tuck Fest, and you basically pay for a bib and you can enter all these events at one price. I was already doing the mountain bike race, and I entered the rock climbing, and they had trail racing. And I was like, I'll do it. I bought my first pair of trail running shoes, and I went and raced bikes, ran and rock climbed all in one weekend. From there, it just kept adding distance, really.
Yeah. So I guess so the weight loss journey started 3 years ago. Is that this spring you did your first run? I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, what was that trigger that made you think that this is what you want to do? I mean, obviously you talked about why you wanted to lose weight, but now 3 years in, was it just because you were at this festival and it sounded like fun? Was that the thing that kicked you off?
Well, that was the thing that kicked me off. My sister lives in Oregon, and she met friends that were into trail running. She qualified for Boston Marathon, like very fast, good runners, and they convinced her to enter a 50K. And then that had me interested in doing more running. She actually backed out and never did the 50K. I kept going. My sister's pretty much my best friend, other than my wife. We've always like fed off each other's energy. That's what kind of kept me into it. I kept going, and she has yet to do one, but we're working on it.
Well, sometimes the influence from other people can inspire us or help guide us into doing something. So that's cool that it was your sister that kind of helped spark some interest in this too. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you ran this is part of this thing. You ran this 5K along with the mountain rock climbing and the mountain biking. Why don't you take us through how you evolved from that into making a decision to run the 50K, and then how you selected the 50K that you took on? Why don't you tell us about that little interim phase there, because you're going to have to start training for this 50K too.
Yeah. So after that, I kept, obviously on ultra sign up or run sign up, and found a 10K trail run not far, and did that with a friend of mine. My wife did the 5K distance. So we all kind of did together. It was about 2 hours away. And then from there, I did a 10 miler. They had a 50K option, but it was just, 3 loops of this same, and I did 1 loop. And that didn't go terrible. At the end, I felt pretty good. I was like, I could do more. And I always knew I would end up doing something. And still to this day, I'm going to end up doing something crazy, maybe not as crazy as the stuff you've done, but I know I've always seen myself going further. And it's just, I guess these were affirmations that yes, I could.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Burning River 100?
I've heard that name. Why don't you tell me more about
Okay.
it?
Yeah, so it's a Western States qualifier here in Ohio, and they have a
Okay.
100-mile distance and then a 50-mile distance, and then this year they added a marathon distance. So I was kind of looking for my next thing, and I found that and went and did the marathon distance. And I don't know how particular people are, but it was like 27.8. So it's like, is it an ultra? Is it a marathon? But yeah,
And what
so I did the
what
marathon.
what's the date of the marathon?
It was July 29th.
So it's
Yeah,
2 months ago was when this first marathon happened. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yep, yep. So did that, and I wouldn't say it went great. I mean,
Yeah.
like my body and everything felt good. Ended up with some really bad blisters on the balls of my feet.
Mm.
They're baseball sized, pretty much the entire balls of my feet.
Yeah.
And they ripped open at like mile 21. And yeah, so I was just I as bad as it felt, I left there with confidence because I'm like, if I figure out my feet, I'm good. Because like, my body is okay.
Mm.
It's not
How,
fast. Like I am not fast by any means. That was an 18-minute mile average marathon, but I finished and it felt good, So yeah, I left there with a little bit of confidence, as much pain as my feet were in.
yeah. Well, I think I'd like to rewind just a little bit, and I would love for you to describe the training that you did for this marathon because not very many people just sort of go from zero to marathon in the amount of time that you
Yeah.
did. So I would love to know how you approached the training. If you did you use a coach or not? Walk us through how on earth you got to that
Yeah.
marathon. I'm amazed.
Yeah. So first off, no coach. Maybe that's something I'm kind of looking into as I get into these more serious distances with more aggressive cutoffs where I need to get faster. That's something I am going to be looking into. But so far, no coach. I lost about 150 pounds without any running, just weight training, the rowing machine and, a little bit of that stuff, but mostly just weight training. And like I said, I have a lot of hobbies like these bicycles that help me. And I've kind of pushed that past where I just used to do a little bit for fun to doing it more for training. And then, when I knew I was going to be doing these races, I did increase running more than zero, but
Yeah.
I didn't run a whole lot and I still don't because like I said, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I would say like maybe once or twice a week, I would go for a 4 mile trail run. That's kind of where I'm at still. Like, I go to the gym every other day, and then I spend those days I'm not at the gym with the dogs, going on a little walk, or with my wife or whatever. So I will occasionally, once or twice a week. Still to this day, the longest training run I've done is 8 miles.
Wow.
I don't know if that comes from just growing up racing, where it's like racers race, like I can't see myself going for a 26.2 run for fun. Like, I guess I have to be signed up for something and committed to not make an excuse not to. Maybe
Yeah.
that's something I would do if it wasn't like a race situation. But none of them are. I guess the longest distance is like 1.8 miles.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, yeah, and you can't really connect them, and it's doing laps and it gets repetitive. So that's why I say like 4 miles is 2 loops, ish. And after that, it kind of gets old until the next time I go. So
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why. And then we have a beautiful bike path here as well. But running on pavement in a straight line is a bit boring for me. I think that's why the trail running thing, I stuck with that because I grew up in the woods riding dirt bikes or mountain biking, and it feels more keeps my brain moving more than just asphalt on the road or the bike path. So it no excuses. I just simply choose to do other types of training.
That's enough for your cardiovascular system to allow you to be in shape enough for the breathing part of the running because the running obviously takes all kinds of your body, but Did you say rowing as well as cycling is what you're doing?
Yeah, rowing machine, the ski erg, if you're familiar with what that is. Yeah, that sort of thing. And then I kind of switched it up leading in into the 50K, and we can get into that whenever. Up until then, like I said, trail runs once or twice a week and mostly just gym work and
Yeah.
more leg focused gym work than I'd done in the last few years. It's really the only thing I switched.
So then when you ran the marathon, now this is probably the longest you've ever run and the longest amount of time you've ever been on your feet for a single thing. So your blisters are going to be how, your feet have never seen this activity before or that much of a
Yeah.
repetitive duration of time. I think that's an interesting side effect of this type of training is that you're not able to practice all that super long time on feet where you could get blisters during a 26-mile trail run, training run, but it also makes me think about how the mental toughness you must have to all of a sudden be thrown into the marathon and be having to go for so many hours and you haven't practiced that. So what was it like
Yeah.
to have to press through this thing you don't enjoy so that you make sure to finish it?
I had some dark moments for sure. There was 1,800 people racing that, not
Okay.
the marathon, but the entire, every distance combined.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of people on course. I'm still feeling spunky, and I'm catching up to a 100 miler that's 60 miles in, or whatever it was. So we were kind of on the same level, and it's crazy that the mental space these people were in a positive way at 60ish, and I'm 10ish, and so I was able to bump into a lot of good people throughout there. That last, was it 6.5 miles with the blisters rip wide open, was a battle. The way they end that race is 5 miles on the towpath trail, like a rails trail type deal, all the way to the finish. And it's fully exposed, it's straight, it's flat, and you can see forever. And it kind of messes with your head
I
because
bet.
you can see so far. I was hobbling pretty good, but I feel like I can't imagine someone, if they're out there, I've never met them, someone that would get that far and not finish. If you don't have to carry me across, I'm gonna get there. But yeah, I was definitely hurting, and I had ups and downs for sure. That was kind of the first distance where we had an aid station with my wife, and that was really cool seeing her. That was an up, and then I had a down shortly after that, and that was my first experience with the ups and downs of ultras, although it wasn't a true ultra. For
Sure.
me, going from a 10 miler to a 26, it definitely felt much longer.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was a cool experience. It was a good first one. I mean, like I said, a lot of entries, very formal. They had a pre race meeting on Friday that you had to attend. There was no packet pickup on Saturday. They rented out this massive convention center for it.
Yeah.
It was quite the ordeal. Made you feel like athlete, like it was very official, very cool. Everyone was super nice, and the medal I got is insane. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Well, then what did you do afterwards to take care of the blisters? I'm curious to know about that part.
Yeah, so first thing, I got back, and my wife basically carried me to the chair and took everything out of the cooler, and we put my feet in the cooler full of ice. She had to park so far that she had to carry like 3 trips with the cooler and the chairs. And she was like, "Nope, I'm gonna take one trip. You stay here." And she went and
Oh,
she walked all the way to the van, because we have a van, and she brought it up and got as close to me as possible. And that one was about an hour and a half away from where we live, so it wasn't too terrible. I guess after that, kind of, I made it worse by putting a blister patch on after the blister had already started.
okay.
So now I am on blister suspension. She will not let me put them in my vest for any races because she doesn't trust me. But yeah, ripping that off was not fun. That made it worse. But yeah, kind of just used some gauze and tape for a few days, and I walked a little funny. Wore comfy sandals as much as possible, and maybe 4 days it was not healed, but like I could walk normal and
You're
live a
okay.
normal life.
Okay.
I've seen worse, but I've never had worse.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Because,
Yeah,
well, depending on how where your running journey takes you, you could potentially have much worse yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about what happened next then. So, the end of July, you run your first marathon. Do you know at this point that you're going to be running a 50K soon?
No,
Oh, okay. So,
so I knew I would. I wasn't signed up for one. I knew that was the next step. but I was not signed up for one prior to that. So
Yeah.
yeah, just the 50, that specific 50K was kind of by chance. I had a good friend of mine, he lives out in West Texas, and he was coming into town, and we were trying to figure out, he was looking to do something crazy adventure, something cool. So I was like, hey, like I'm kind of in the process of moving. I can't really go out of state, but if you want to fly here, like we'll do some mountain biking all week and then we'll do this 50K. And
Okay.
he's a very fit, but not a runner. Very
Okay.
fit, very in good shape. Had tons of self-doubt, but I knew he was going to be fine because he's just in such good shape and such a tough guy. So yeah, that's kind of how that one. I was off work, he was off work. It worked out for him to fly into town. And yeah, it was about 2-ish hours away. That's how we chose that one, and that's how I ended up there. But I always knew that was the next step. I just wasn't sure which one it would be.
And so tell us the name of the race and when it was.
But that one was called the Yote, like coyote,
Okay.
Yote. It's called Tar Hollow State Park, Southern Ohio. Um, Race director, his name was Chris, super cool guy. Yeah, kind of lucked out. Just, I guess I keep saying I luck out meeting these cool people, but I'm just going to accept that everyone's cool, like everyone at these things are awesome. So yeah, just another awesome group. And yeah, it's called the Yote Tar Hollow State Park in Southern Ohio.
And so you made a comment that there may have been a little bit of some kind of difference in how you did training for the 50K versus the marathons. How the training changed or how you started to get ready for this first ultra?
Yeah, so I had been to this state park before. I kind of knew the terrain, very hilly, very steep, very rugged, just in the woods. I knew the elevation was going to be, they didn't quite have a full course profile out. He had his all trails from him doing the course.
Yeah.
His said 3,600 gain. The Burning River Marathon was 2,100. So I
Okay.
knew I needed to train more for that. I did a lot of stair climber, went to one of the shorter trails here at the state park by my house and did hill repeats.
Okay.
We have a new treadmill at our gym that does 30% incline one day over an hour and a half. I did an hour and a half straight of 30-degree incline, and that hurt. But
Yeah.
I kind
Okay.
of just switched it up to more hill focused, did a lot more leg workouts, kind of skipped. If there was a day where I was going to do shoulders or back, I would do a leg day instead. Just kind of knew that leg strength and power was going to be very beneficial. Although I only had a few weeks, I knew I was doing this, but I was going to make the most of it. I kind of just did more strength and elevation type work with the Stairmaster and the treadmill.
Interesting. So is the course itself, are you finding that you're hiking a lot during the 50K because of its ruggedness? How is the runnability of the course if you are interested in running it?
If you looked at the guy who won it, I would say it's very, very runnable. There was
Okay.
definitely runnable sections. A lot. It was very steep. There were lots of stuff like I ride downhill mountain bikes, and there was stuff that I would double think going down on a full suspension downhill mountain bike.
Oh,
It was kind of unrelenting, especially being my first one. It felt very steep. There were hills where I'm sliding, and we were in the middle of a 1 month drought out here. So, just added to being slippery, I guess, drier. So, yeah, I felt like it was very steep in lots of spaces. My total gain at the end of it on my Strava was 4,500. So it
okay.
ended up being a little bit more than what his said. So I'm still learning what to trust, but mine
Yeah.
said 45 and I'm going to die on that hill.
What is
Um,
the style of course? Is it a loop or out and back?
yeah, it was a single loop course.
Okay. And so single loop 50K with your watch saying 4,500 feet of gain. Are there aid stations that a crew is allowed to access? And did you have a crew with?
Yes, yeah. So there was two crew, and then you could have a drop bag at mile 21.
Okay.
So that's what I opted to do. My wife, bless her, I see that yours is a huge part of it. And
Yeah.
I honestly drug her into the living room the other day. I'm like, look, like you guys could totally get along. Bless her heart. She takes it so serious, and it's
Mhm.
awesome. She'll be taking notes and have everything written down. So there was a crew station at mile 7, mile 15, and then you could have a drop bag at 21. So I opted to use all of those. And then there
Yeah.
was water stations and a few scattered throughout.
When you got to that first crew stop. What are the kinds of things that you did there to get ready for the next section? And how did your wife help you as your crew?
Yeah, so I guess what we do or what we've been doing that seems to work very well is leading, like, a few days before the race, I'll get freezer bags, like Ziploc bags, and I will write, I'll do one for my start, which means that's the stuff I'm going to start with, and then I'll do the aid stations, I'll write them on them, and then that way she has them. And so for that one, she has everything laid out. I hand her my vest, she goes through what I used. She basically just empties it out, replaces it, and then she'll track what I used and what I didn't use.
Oh, I like that idea.
That way we know throughout of it. And then she keeps all my trash. That way at the end, I can track my calories and all my macros, just to see if I stuck to the plan or how crazy off I was.
Yeah.
So we did that there. And then I knew that after that aid station, there was 2.75 miles of pavement downhill. I had been wearing I started with the Ultra Lone Peaks, and I have a pair of the Ultra Olympus trail shoes. I switched to those at that aid station just because they have a little bit more cushion with the asphalt. There was 7 miles there. It's just alternating shoes. And if I was going to have to wear the Olympus, I wanted to wear them with the asphalt section.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, shoe swap, no sock swap. I felt like my feet were great. And we did tape. We learned from the marathon. We taped everything that was a weak spot at the marathon. I came out with 0 blisters after this 50K. So I think we got it at least for that distance.
Right.
So we'll find new ones at the next distance. But for now, I think we got it. Yeah. So we switched shoes there. And then, yeah, there was another 7.6 or whatever to the next one at 15.5. I thought the cutoff was 1 o'clock for the 15.5 station. So for the last 2+ miles leading to it, I put out a big effort. Like, I was cutting it close and I really exerted myself. Yeah. And I get there literally at 1 o'clock and they were like, "Oh, it's 1:30." And I'm like,
so you got there 30 minutes ahead of cutoff. You thought that you were getting there just at cutoff. I see. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly literally thought I got there the minute that the cutoff was, because I got there exactly at 1 o'clock. And they say, "Oh, it's 1:30, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just put out this huge effort and I didn't have to. And they were like, "Well, at least you'll have a 30-minute head start,
That's right.
for the next
You worked
one."
hard to get yourself a better buffer.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get to that because it's comical about that. But yeah, my wife and her friend were that one as well. We swapped back to my Lone Peaks, restocked everything. I had the first full sugar energy drink I've had in years since I started losing weight, but I knew it wasn't going to hurt me at that point.
Yeah, sure.
So I had a Red Bull and restocked the vest and took off from there. The next one was mile 21, and that was a 3 o'clock cutoff. And I got there at 2:54.
Oh man. Okay.
So,
well, I'm really glad you had that buffer.
That's what I was saying. Like the 30 minutes, I didn't finish 30 minutes early. I was kind of chasing cutoffs the whole time. And it's not because I didn't push myself. And I left there knowing that. I pushed myself after that. There were certain points, like up until the first one at 1 o'clock, I put out a big effort to get there on time. And then maybe the last mile or so up to the next one to get there on time. But early on, I didn't push myself hard enough, and it led me to having to chase these cutoffs at the end. And I guess we could just get into the dramatic finish I had, which is also funny.
Well, before I am curious to know about this 21-mile aid station. So you had a drop bag there. I'm curious to know, is it your first time 50K or what you chose to put in your drop bag? And also what your mental thoughts were, putting it together. I'm kind of curious to know how you learned about what you want to put in your drop bag and how you built it.
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up with the fitness, in fitness as a younger kid, learn nutrition and what your body requires to kind of do these things. So I've always had that. I just kind of threw it away for a while I got big. I'm kind of a nerd with learning that stuff and knowing. So I've kind of got it down to a science where if I'm doing these, I know I kind of need 600 to 650 calories an hour.
Okay.
And 700 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium an hour. I like doing it by hour because my mileage per hour changes all the time. So some people do it by mile, and I don't like doing that because it's so inconsistent with me and hills and the way I feel. So doing it by hour is a good way for me to do it. So yeah, so I have the Osprey Duro vest. So it has two Hydropack soft flasks in the front that are 500 milliliters. I always keep either Tailwind or G1M Sport from Bayer Performance Nutrition in there. So that's kind of like a carb electrolyte mix. And then I have 250 milliliter soft bottles that I'll just do a scoop of electrolytes in each of those. And then a 1.5 liter bladder that's just water.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of, the Tailwind's 200 calories each. And then, so that's like my fluids that I've been doing. I think it works. I think I'm just going to stick with that for now.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, gels. I don't go too heavy on gels, probably one per hour. I'll plan for one gel per hour. And then I'll do a honey stinger waffle, as well. And then either a Cliff bar or a Meal Pro bar. So that's kind of like my 650 calories per hour. So I kind of stocked all of those things. I like doing the Tailwind for my wife because it's in a single serving pouch. She doesn't have to scoop. She, just dump the whole thing in there. And I have 2 sets of soft flasks now, so she can always have one full when I show up. So yeah, that's at the 21 drop bag station. I had 2 packets of Tailwind, some packets of Mortal Hydration, which is what I was doing for electrolytes that day, and then some honey stinger waffles and some gels. And I also had a pair of socks there in case I needed them. I ended up not switching socks. So yeah, I just kind of restocked the vest and took off from there. And I actually had a cup of Coke there as well.
Is that true?
No, there was a water station. Yeah, there was a water station between there.
All right.
Yeah.
So why don't you lead us through that last 10-mile section and your big dramatic finish?
Yeah, so again, not pushing myself. If you look at my elapsed time and my moving time, it's kind of crazy how much time I wasted not moving. It's actually a few hours. And that mile 21 aid station, a lady had dogs. I stopped to pet her dogs there for a minute.
Hey, you have to have fun.
Yeah. And like I said, I guess I was just kind of in the moment, not really thinking about it. And at 21, I had 4 hours till the cutoff. I'm like, I can do 10 miles, 4 hours, no problem. So I'm like petting the dog, kind of hanging out, and then not really pushing it. And I thought I was going crazy there, maybe 3 miles from the finish, because I was hearing voices. At that point, I knew I was in last, which is fine. People DNF'd. I was the last finisher. I can live with that. But I knew I was last, but I was hearing voices behind me. And I'm like, man, I'm going crazy. I kept looking back. There's no one back there. And then finally, I looked back and I saw people, and it was some volunteers picking up the flags behind me.
Right. Yeah. The sweepers.
Then part of me, I was like, it's come to this. But then part of me was like, oh, I have some people to talk to or whatever. And they were super nice, super cool. I felt bad because they were very fit, very equipped to go fast. And even just picking up flags, they were catching up to me very quickly. We get to a big hill and I'd be like, I'm sorry, guys, this is going to take a minute. I felt like we were getting towards the end and that time was creeping up on me, like I was like, man, I know we're close, but we're also close on time. And I actually yelled back to him like, hey, am I going to make it? And he's like, yeah, you're moving good. You're going to make it. I'm like, no, I mean like on time. And he looked at his watch and he said, can you run? And I was like, yeah. So we had 20 minutes, 2 miles. So I had to put down 10-minute miles for the last 2 miles.
Oh, dude.
In the woods at the end of a 50K. And I ended up getting in. The cutoff was 11 hours. I ended up getting at 10:58:02. And everyone else is gone besides like my wife and my friends. Everyone else is gone. And we come out of the woods and I'm sure it looked crazy because there's this random guy, pacing me because he paced me out the last bit, and the I think, I don't know if they were dating, but the woman he was with was saying like, I'll stay behind and grab the flags if you want to go with him. So shout out to that guy. I didn't really get his name, but that was super cool of him. Like he kind of pushed me, to get out of there. And yeah, 10:58:02 with an 11-hour cutoff time. It was quite dramatic.
Yeah, sounds dramatic.
It was funny because out of all this crazy stuff I do, and I felt like I feel like all the time there's more reasons for it, but my wife like said, I'm so proud of you.
Mm.
And like, I do crazy shit all the time. And like, I don't think she's ever been proud. She's just like, oh, he's an idiot. You know what I mean? But I told her, I'm like, after, I'm like, I'm going to be chasing that forever now. Like, I know she's proud of me. I know she loves me, but like to do something for her to say that, I was like, that was pretty cool. Like, cause it's not something she's super into. So I guess she understood the effort I went through there to get out. And yeah, that was cool. So yeah, my actually, my friends that I did the 50K with, they finished ahead of me. My buddy from Texas did it in, I believe, 8 hours, 47 minutes. And then my other buddy finished just ahead of me. So yeah, they were all there, and yeah, it was pretty cool.
Oh man, to be able to throw down 2 10-minute miles at the end, that is really tough. Good for you.
It was tough. And yeah, I made a joke when I crossed the line. I'm like, I don't know why you guys were in such a hurry. I was just getting my money's worth. We paid for 11 hours.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I learned a lot. I didn't leave there feeling like I put put everything into it. I felt like I slacked off too much, and that's what led me to chasing these cutoffs. So I feel like I have more, but I guess I need to find that switch to make that turn on and not
Mhm.
fall into just power hiking or shuffling when I really could be going quicker. That'll come with confidence. I think it's just a confidence thing. I try to reserve myself too much, and then I have to put out these big efforts at the end to make the cutoffs. And then I'm like, oh, I had that in me all this whole time. So
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
yeah, it's a learning process for sure.
What are your plans from here?
Yeah, absolutely. So after doing this, seeing where I was at, the plan was always to go into the Leadville lottery, but they just released their date the other day for next year, and we have a scheduling conflict.
Okay.
So I will be doing 100% doing 100 next year. Don't want to put out which one. I don't really know yet, but I definitely will be doing 100 next year. If I do maybe a 50 before then, I'm not sure. But yeah, the plan is definitely to do 100. And that was always the plan. Like I said,
Okay.
once I did a 5K trail run, I'd, go down the rabbit hole of YouTube, and I'm like, all right, I want to do these longer ones. And even now it's like, I'll never do a 250 or a 240, but who knows? Let's see. But yeah, I really want to do 100 next year. Doing 100 bicycle ride was a goal of mine this year, and I did that. So 100 on feet would be really cool to do. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious to know about your since you don't like running, but there's probably something you're enjoying about ultra running. I'm wondering if the the pace that is you can do a hiking pace for a lot of an ultra and still get it finished. Obviously, you might have to hustle at the end, but can you talk
Mhm.
about your comfort moving at the paces that you were moving? I mean, it wasn't always running, so I'm curious if it makes ultra running and these and ultras seem more appealing to you because they're not really like running like a 5K is running.
Yeah, exactly. I'll do our local 5Ks here on the road. I just did my first 8-minute mile earlier this week, which is a big goal. My goal is to go sub 8, but I did it 8,
Okay, well, good
8:30
for
is
you.
what it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is the pace. And also, like I said, just being in the woods.
Mhm.
I've always been in the woods. I always loved hiking, always loved mountain biking in the woods and riding motorcycles in the woods. So I think that's a big part of it. And
Okay.
I think like the travel, like I said, we have a van, and if we weren't doing that, we'd be going to the woods anyway to go hike or camp. And my wife's kind of, she made a comment, and she was like, I really liked hiking, and that just wasn't enough for you. Now you have to go run through the woods. We can't just go backpack or go hike. She's like, now you have to run. I was like, we can still just go hike and not run. But I think that's the biggest part of it.
Okay.
I still like, this morning I went and ran at the track. Like I do like that sort of thing. And I'm sure I'll do if I do like a road marathon, it'd be somewhere cool, like a cool city somewhere. It'd have to be that. I'm not against it, but I truly think it's because the places that the ultras take you versus just going to a city, or I think that's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, you'll get to see some places that you otherwise would have gone to and see things you never
Yeah.
would have seen. Yeah, that you're Ultras open up your worlds to so many exciting things. And so
Yeah.
I'm excited that you definitely see the value in that. Was there anything that really surprised you about your experience running a 50K that you didn't see coming?
How much my poles would become crutches.
Okay.
That you start with in the quiver and you're like, I'll just pull them out on the big steep hills. And then by the end of it, they become like your crutches. They're just holding you up. That's for me at least. Like I use them on the downhills and the flats and the uphills now. We actually took my quiver off my pack at the halfway point because I wasn't even putting them away. I just kind of kept them the rest of the way. That would probably be the biggest surprise. The only blister I got was on my thumb from my poles, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no foot problems. That was a huge relief.
And any other recovery issues, or did you take any time to deal with any niggles, any muscles, or anything other issues?
Yeah, I mean, I was stiff for sure. I had to walk in like a 2x4 for about a full day. I actually had to drive. The closest airport's like an hour and a half from us, so I had to drive my buddy back to the airport the next day, which I shouldn't complain because he had to fly, all the way back to West Texas. So I was definitely stiff. Yeah, I'd say I went to the gym 3 days later. I took probably, about 3 days off. And then probably about a week before I did any running, my feet were swollen, which seems to be a common thing.
Yeah.
Even at the marathon distance, I feel it when I put my sandals on. They feel smaller. I ate a crap ton of food I probably shouldn't have after that 50K. It was delicious. I never eat fast food, but we went to Arby's and pigged out.
Yeah, well, you had a lot of calories you needed to replace, and so that's a good way to do it.
No, that was probably some of the funniest was the drive back. I was just laying in the back of the van while my wife drove us home. And yeah, the funny conversations.
Hmm. Well, I'm glad that you were able to have your wife there be a part of it with you because I value my wife being as part of my crew. It's an emotional boost to me to have her
Yeah.
be a part of these things, and so it just warms my heart to know that you've got some support there too.
Yeah.
Is there anything that having finished an ultra that you can sort of what's the story of you right now as you've gone along your weight loss journey and now you're kind of looking at longer distances on your feet? How would you describe where you're at in your journey now, and how do you see running and ultra running being a part of your future?
I'm proud of choosing the hardest thing I could think to do for fun and kind of doing it. I am proud of that. I'm very grateful that I have the body that can do that. Thankful for my wife to be with me through it. I would say I'm in the very early stages. I have dreams of pushing this distance for sure. I'm still in the honeymoon phase of learning what my body requires, the gear. I see myself doing a lot more with it. It's exciting. Yeah.
Before we go, what advice do you have for other runners who are now starting out on their ultra journey? What recommendations and suggestions do you have for the listeners?
Don't be afraid to fail. That's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to fail and commit to hard things. If people are even interested in this, they already have what it takes to do it. You wouldn't consider this sort of thing if you didn't have, but if you're already looking into it, you have what it takes to do it.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of that crazy in you, like I think anyone that does it does. Don't be scared to fail. What's the worst? You learn. Everything's learning, whether you fail or not. And I think 9 times out of 10, you're going to surprise yourself that you didn't fail. It's just that commitment to potentially failing. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
And everyone says it. Everyone on a lot of people on your podcast has said it, that we're capable of so much more than we even imagine. So yeah, make that commitment. You'll be very surprised. The people, I haven't met a bad person at any of these. Everyone's super nice. I come from quite a different background of people, and it's not like that. It's very welcoming, very nice. Even being the biggest guy on that starting line, I'm 260 pounds. I don't look like anybody else on that starting line, and no one treated me differently, and they waited, like the race promoter, always people waited at the finish line and were cheering me on just like I won it.
Yeah.
It was very cool. It's addicting, especially if you like to nerd out on the science like I do. Don't be scared.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you've had such a great community experience. I think you're right. That's one of the things I love about this sport too. And yeah, we have all welcomed you because you're part of the family now.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see where your journey takes you and to watch you crush even more distances. Thanks a lot for coming on Ultra Origins and sharing your story. It was really great to get to know you. And hopefully we'll see you on the trails.
Yeah. Very honored to meet you and talk to you, Wes.
Thank you so much for joining me on Ultra Origins, Brandon. It was really great to talk with you. If you have recently finished your first Ultra, or if you've recently completed a major new distance and would like to share your story here in this series, go to honoredendurance.com and click on Ultra Origins at the top of the page. Thank you for watching. I look forward to sharing more Ultra Origin stories with you.